See very often in this seminar. He this morning and this afternoon we'll see him again. So Matthew Wilson for Broiler lighting.
Thank you, Boris. It's been really good to think that people think I look like Mark Zuckerberg. I just wish I had the money that he has. That would be good. So broiler lighting, probably, if you look at where research over the last 50 years in broilers has gone, except for nutrition, there's been more research with regards to lighting, lighting programs, lighting type, and light intensity than probably any other field. We're going to talk about birds having sea lights and why it's important. We're going to talk about light types because there's been quite an advancement in lighting types, especially with LEDs on the market in the last 10 years. We're going to look at some lighting research on light intensity, and we're also going to look at lighting programs as well. Chickens have a view of around a panoramic view of about 300 degrees and a binocular vision of about 26 degrees. And a sight is a well-developed acute sensitivity that birds have developed, especially with regards to colour vision, which is very important. Humans and poultry are both sensitive to green light, and that probably goes back to our jungle past. But poultry and birds have a much more sensitive perception of light. They can see red, blue, and ultraviolet light. Colour vision depends on the cone-rod ratio in the eye. Cones are colour sensitive, while rods provide the ability to see under dim light. So this is the vision, the wavelength vision that a human sees. Our eyesight is also well developed, but you see where you have a very narrow perspective with regards to those nanometers, approximately about 390 to 650. So when we look at this butterfly here, we see quite a lot of contrast and colour. But birds have a much wider vision, especially down here in the ultraviolet light. And you see where they have, instead of one peak like in human vision, we see here 3 peaks. So when they look at the same butterfly or anything, they see much more contrast and depth with regards to that vision. Light, white, blue, green light allows birds to see contrast and therefore find feed and water. And critically important for birds is that able for them to define social rank and order. So when we look at a white chicken, they all look pretty much the same. But when birds look at each other, white chickens and another white chicken, they see much more contrast, much more depth. So they're able to recognize differences. Birds see less contrast with red light, and this is sometimes used to induce cannibalism. Blue light has short wavelength and cannot penetrate well into the skull. Red light has long wavelength and penetrates deep into the tissue and goes through the skull. Birds not only see light through their eye, but that light also penetrates in through the skull of the bird. When birds look at pictures, when they look at an image, they see around about 200 to 250 pictures a second. To contrast with humans, we see about 30. So birds have a very keen sense of light. They needed to survive, they needed to find feed, and they also needed to be able to recognize each other and define social rank and order. So light penetration through the eye, through the retina, affects behavior and activity. And light through the skull goes into the deep brain, the photoreceptors in the hypothalamus in the brain, the pineal gland. No? Not working? Hello? Can you hear me? Forget the rest I was saying, it wasn't perfect. It goes into the pineal gland, the preoptic area, the lateral septal organ, and affects the biological process in the bird. The pituitary gland regulates the growth hormone through the thyroid gland. And we'll talk later about the importance of that. And this is interesting. This is the size of a bird's eye, and this is the size of their brain. Almost equal. Almost equal. So through evolution, through thousands and thousands of millennia, birds have developed a very keen sense of sight. So light, types, and what works best? Well, color temperature in the light is important. We've already seen the spectrum of light that birds can see. And measuring the temperature of the light is measured in what's called kelvins. Short wavelength, so less than 5,000 kelvins, sorry, more than 5,000 kelvins, are called cool lights. These are bluish lights. It's a blue color. Looking at 4,000 kelvins, this is neutral light. And long wavelength, less than 3 kelvins, are called warm colors. This is yellowish red type light. When we talk about the efficiency of light, what's important is the lumen per watt. That's the important criteria to measure. And when we talk about light meters, certainly with regards to LEDs, not all light meters are able to register the wavelength of LEDs. Gallilux, therefore, is a light meter that specifically looks at what the bird sees with regards to light intensity. Many of the light meters we use measure lux, but as perceived by the human eye. And as we've already seen, the bird's eye and the human's eye is very different. So, for example, when you look at LED lights and look at 1 lux, that's the equivalent to 1.6 gallilux. Or fluorescent lights, 1 lux, is equal to 1.25 gallilux. Now, there is meters on the market today that are specifically designed to measure gallilux. So when you think about buying a light meter, don't look at a lux meter, acquire a gallilux meter. So this is the light spectrum, this is natural light. And looking at it from an artificial light point of view, you see here it measures in kelvins. So when we look at high pressure sodiums, it's down here in this red orange light, 2,200 kelvins. We look at here in the neutral, around about 3,400 kelvins. And up here in this blue or cool light, we're looking at a kelvin of about 4,000 plus. Again, looking at the kelvins, 3,000 is this yellow type light, and you see here this more blue, white type light is 5,000 kelvins. When you look at the research that's been done, especially with LED lights over the last number of years, basically what the research tells us is that for broilers, 3,000 to 5,000 kelvins is the optimal light temperature, and for hens and pullets, it's less than 3,000 kelvins. But it's important to have the right light meter when you're measuring light, and that is also the right light meter for the type of light that you've installed. So lighting evolution. When I was growing up, all broiler houses, all poultry houses, had incandescent lights, incandescent bulbs. They were good for dimming, but were resistant to poor power supply. They also had a low lifespan, less than 2,000 hours operating. And they were inefficient, only 10 lumens per watt. As lighting developed, we moved into more compact fluorescent type. The efficiency improved to 60 lumens per watt and a longer lifespan of about 6,000 hours. But dimming was difficult and there was a high failure rate. Then we started going to standard LED bulb lights. These were more efficient than fluorescent or compact tube lights. 80 to 100 lumen, long lifespan, 25,000 hours. But they were sensitive to the environment that we placed them in our broiler houses and our poultry houses. Now, evolution with LEDs, we've got specific LEDs, up to 180 lumens per watt, our long lifespan of at least 55,000 hours, designed to withhold, to be resistant in a poultry house and farm, with our cleaning, dust, etc., and temperature differences. So there's been a long evolution in light types in our broiler houses. And this is looking at the characteristics of various lights: incandescent, fluorescence, sodiums, and LEDs. And it's really the lumens per watt with regards to efficiency that's important. With buying LEDs today, we shouldn't be buying LEDs less than 160 lumens per watt, and at least able to last 55,000, 60,000 hours. The first light, of course, that we used was natural light. And if you go to the UK and to other parts of Europe, now it's standard practice, it's a regulation by the welfare bodies, by the supermarkets, that we must provide natural light for birds. So you see here in this new broiler house how they've installed windows in these houses. Of course, the advantage with natural light is that it's got the full spectrum for the birds. But it's difficult to control light intensity. And the total hours depends on the season and the geographical location. Installing windows, especially in wide houses, can lead to bright and dark spots, uneven light intensity. So in some houses, especially in the Netherlands, now they're installing these windows, these glass tubes actually in the ceiling. And using photocell sensors, they can detect how much light to have in the house and adjust those photocells to an electronic digital dimmer system. Incandescent light, standard type of light, still used widely in the world, especially in places in Asia, South America. They're easy to dim, and the initial cost is low. But 95% of the energy is converted to heat, and only 5% into light. So high operating cost for this. And a short lifespan. Inefficient. Fluorescent type lights, well, there's a lot of different types of fluorescent type lights. They're more efficient than incandescent, 40 to 70 lumens per watt. Can be dimmed easily. Depends very much on the light and on the dimmer. But the big issue with fluorescent lights is what the poultry sees when it looks at that light. It often sees a discontinuous light or a crystal diffusion frequency. It's a photomeric flicker. It's a rapid change in the light output of the lamp. And it's presumed that a flickering lamp gives impressions to the chickens that a predator is hovering overboard, is hovering above the birds. So when they see a flickering light, they feel nervous. And this continuous traffic can be stressful on birds. And sometimes when you go into poultry houses, into broiler houses, you see the birds are very nervous. They're walking through and they're moving away from you. They're very flighty. The light frequencies of a lamp can be read by a special meter called a spectroradiometer. It measures, I'll show you a picture, it measures the frequency and the hertz of that lamp. So this is what we see when we look at a fluorescent light. But this is what the birds see. So even for us, we can't see that flickering because our light sensitivity is not as well developed as the birds. Birds can see this flickering. And this flickering is the rapid change in the brightness of the lamp and the frequency which this takes place. So the brightness, but also how quickly it takes place. And that's measured in hertz per second. The higher the frequency, the less visible that flickering is to birds. And when the flicker can no longer be seen, this is called the flicker fusion frequency. And it's measured with a special meter, here's one of them, that measures the percent flicker and the flicker index. And the maximum flicker in the frequency should not be more than 0.06. High pressure sodiums, not popular in broiler houses, popular more in breeder houses. They have a high light intensity and a warm spectrum, yellow, orange, red, about 2,100 Kelvin. They're pretty efficient, 50 to 140 lumens per watt. They give a good spread of light, but they need time to warm up. The initial cost is high. The operating cost is low, though. Dimming is difficult. So what about LEDs, light emitting diodes? They're very efficient, and they have a long lifespan, and there's no heat production. The light efficiency transformation of electricity into visible light is the opposite to incandescence, 95%. It can come in many different types and forms, strips, bulbs, tubes. B9 are 120 to 160 degrees, especially now today. Special ones for lights, for poultry, they're fully dimmable. But beware of the quality and the price. LEDs have gained huge popularity. In many regions of the world, there's special dispensations, government assistance to reduce energy costs, places like in Europe, South Africa. Sometimes the cheapest is not the best. So make sure you have at least a standard IP68 because of washing and temperatures in our houses. So what about the studies on LED? I'm not going to bore you with all of them, but here's a selection of them. White LEDs enhance the purpurity of blood lymphocyte proliferation. Broilers reared under yellow LEDs have better platelet counts and hematological response compared to incandescent light and were a positive influence on growth. Birds raised under red LEDs had a higher fat content, while birds raised under yellow LEDs had a least fat percentage in the breast meat. And white LED light improves the essential and non-essential amino acid content of the breast meat. So how do you know what the kelvins are when you're looking at your LED? Well, some it's very easy. You see here, 2,700 kelvins. But some other lights, it's a little bit more difficult to see. But when you look after the watts, and you look at the last two numbers, it's telling you what the kelvins is of the light. So this one here is 27, 2,700 kelvins. And this one here is 40 or 4,000 kelvins. So neutral. This is warm light. This is a trial that was done in 2011 by Dr. Susan Watkins of the University of Arkansas. It was lights that were tested in 6 commercial broiler houses over a 1-year period. They used 3 LED products at one 3,700 kelvins, so neutral. One 4,000 kelvins, also neutral. One 6,000 kelvins, so a cool blue type LED light. Then some tube lights at 2,700 kelvins, warm light, and a 5,100 kelvins, cool light. Look at compact dimmable fluorescence, one product. 11,000 lumens, 1,100 lumens, and incandescent 60-watt bulbs. And basically what the research showed, that when we looked at weight gain, average daily gain, and this is over 7 flocks over 1 year, that the best weight gain of all the lights that was chosen was from the warm LEDs. And the worst daily gain is from the cool LEDs. So we don't want to install high Kelvin LEDs in our broiler houses. LEDs contain no mercury and lasting longer creates less waste, so they're environmentally friendly. They have high reliability. They're pretty robust and vibration proof. Because of their size, it allows them to fit in many kind of areas that conventional lights is more difficult to be placed in. Replacing 1.2 fluorescent lights at 6 meters would require 9-watt LEDs placed at 3-meter intervals. So when you're upgrading your house, you need to install more light fixtures. Dimming can be expensive. So what about light intensity? Well, this is the recommendation you'll see in the Cobb Broiler manual. Amin will talk about this later in more detail when he talks about brooding. But in that brooding phase, we want to have a minimum light intensity at floor level, not less than 25 lux. And gradually reducing this between 5 and 14 days to somewhere around about 5 or 10 lux. That depends on many things. In some parts of the world, such as in Europe, there are local restrictions to how low you can reduce your light intensity. To have lower light intensity than 20 lux in Europe, you need to have a vet to approve that. Uniformity of light intensity seems to be important, and between the darkest and the brightest spot, we want to have a light intensity variation not more than 20%. And if we partial house brood, we shouldn't begin dimming the lights until the birds are in the full house area. And 48 hours before catching, increase the light intensity to 20 lux to make the catching process easier and the birds more docile during the procedure. So this is the most recent study that I could find on light intensity done in broilers. It was done last year in the University of Arkansas by Penn. It was done using Cobb broilers, and it was a light intensity study that looked at using incandescent lights. For the first 6 days, the birds had 24 hours light and a light intensity of 30 lux. From 7 to 41 days, the birds were in a 6-hour dark period of 1 block. And from 7 to 13 days, the birds were in a light intensity of 10 lux. From day 14 to 41, there was 5 different light intensity treatments. 2 lux, very dark. 10 lux, 20 lux, 100 lux, and a novel treatment where the birds had a light intensity choice of 2 or 20 lux. So the birds had a choice of 2 compartments. In both compartments was feed and water, and the light intensity of 2 and 20 lux. When we look at weight gain, the best was for the 10 lux, and the worst was for 100 lux. Probably not surprising when you look at over 50 years of research on light intensity. Many of the research shows the same thing. Birds in higher light intensity, more active, using more calories, higher feed conversion, and lower weight gain. When we looked at feed conversion, the very low light intensity of 2 lux had a very good feed conversion. But the best feed conversion was with the group that had the choice between the 2 and 20 lux. I thought that was really interesting because I've seen many studies that show feed conversion improvement in low light intensity, but here, where the birds had a choice, the worst feed conversion was in the 10 lux. And when I look back in the research, Christmas did a study in 2007, slightly different, where the light intensity choices for the bird was 5 and 200 lux, alternating every 2 hours for 16 hours a day, but it had the best feed conversion. So what are the conclusions? Well, I suppose we need to do more research with regards to light intensity. Maybe it's normal and natural for birds to be in a process of different light intensities. Maybe one light intensity is not normal for the birds. There's more research that needs to be done. This is an older study, again looking at light intensity from 0 to 35 days, from 0.5 lux, so very low, to a maximum of 10 lux, with 2 other treatments of 1 lux and 5 lux in between. Weight gain was not improved by having lower light intensity, less than 10 lux. Also, feed conversion wasn't positively affected. Mortality numerically was better in the low light intensity. Uniformity was the same for all treatments. Carcass yield was better in the 10 lux, by 0.3%, and so was breast meat, which is interesting because when you look at the body weights were almost identical. The eye weight was bigger in the lower light intensity, and PODO was worse with having the low light intensity. Again, makes sense. And when I look back in research and look at PODO and light intensity, lower light intensity, more often than not, higher PODO dermatitis. PODO dermatitis is important because in places like Europe, it's used as a measure of broader welfare. And in places like China, selling paws or foot pads is very important, very lucrative. So foot pad quality is an important consideration in operation. This is a chicken house from South Africa. 100 lux with 80% uniformity. Really nice. Really nice. So lighting programs. When you look in the research and lighting programs, again over nearly 50 years, there is a huge volume. You can nearly find whatever you want to prove about lighting programs in the research. But what we do know is that melatonin is a hormone that's released from the pineal gland during the hours of sleep. And this is important because it establishes the circadian rhythms of the bird, of the body temperature, and several essential metabolic functions that influence feed and water intake, patterns and digestion is important in this. And it's a very important integral part of the immune function of the birds. Growth hormone is produced when the birds sleep. T3 and T4, circulating thyroid hormones, are important growth promoters and play an important role in compensatory growth, acceleration in broilers. Again, when you look at the research, many lighting programs talk about the benefit of compensatory weight gain. Lower in the beginning, higher later on. These T3 and T4 cells are important, and McNabb, King, Yaniv, many researchers have found that those birds in lighting programs on dark periods have higher T3, T4 cells. And when birds rest, their level of alkaline phosphate also increases. This helps in bone mineralization. Many parts of the world, such as Brazil, Italy, Canada, United States, grow very large broilers. So 3 kilos, 4 kilos, maybe 5 kilos. All those broilers are grown in the lighting programs, dark period of some time, mainly to have better skeletal and leg development for birds. And also what we know is that when birds rest, and this is a study that was done by teams from Oklahoma University back in the early 2000s, that when birds are sleeping, they rest, they conserve energy, which would have been used for activity, and this energy conservation, reducing heat production and oxygen consumption reduced, improves the feed conversion of the birds. Now this is a study that he did, looking at the heat production of the birds at different ages, 18, 28, 35, and 45 days. This is the light heat output. So the birds are in light. This is the heat output of the birds. This was measured in metabolic chambers And when the birds went into darkness, you see how the heat output of the birds reduced very consistently over all ages by about 30%. And when the heat production of the birds reduces, their oxygen demand is also less. So some research, effective light intensity of photoperiod on live performance by Hess and others in Tanzania, show that 6 hours darkness and 10 lux may result in broader light performance comparable to achieved on 1 hour dark and 10 lux, with no combination of intensities caused any psychological stress. The effect of photoperiod length and light intensity on feed energy and growth responses of broilers, done by Dans and Dozier and others. Minimum effective lighting was observed for carcass or part yields. Decrease in the photoperiod had a positive effect on the performance of the birds. And there's many, many studies that talk about the benefit of a dark period for broilers. So darkness is natural for the birds. Birds in a lighting program are less stressed. The cardiovascular and skeletal system is allowed to develop early on before we put on too much muscle mass on the birds. When birds are rest, they are conserving energy, better feed conversion. There's higher melatonin in the birds. So their immune response to challenges of disease or environmental stress is better. And birds during incubation, studies have already shown, many studies have shown that even in the egg, birds are sensitive to light intensity. And decreased incidence of mortality, sudden death syndrome, with birds on a lighting program. There's many studies to support this. This is a study that was done in the Middle East, in Iran, that looked at 4 different lighting programs: 8 hours dark, 6 hours dark, 4 hours dark, and 1 hour dark. All these dark periods were in one continuous block. When we look at weight gain, there was no negative or positive effect of any of the treatments. Today's broilers are eating machines. They have been selected to have high appetite. So if we give them shorter days, they just eat that feed in a shorter time. But constantly, consistently across all programs was as you increase the hours of darkness, you reduce the feed conversion. Yield, the worst yield was when you gave only 1 hour's darkness. Breast meat, well, interesting in this study that it showed by increasing the dark hours from 4 hours or more, breast meat yield was actually reduced as a percentage of live. But when you look at wing, more hours darkness, more yield. And interesting also in this study, because not many studies have done this, looking at the effect of lighting programs and the carcass makeup. Also, when we look at legs, more hours darkness, 6 hours or more percentage of leg meat. And I thought this was interesting, because again, in much of the research we talk about feed conversion, mortality, weight gain, but not so much about carcass. But more hours darkness, more dark meat, and maybe that's because these birds in the lighting program, when they're in the light hours, are more active. They have to be more active to eat that feed. And maybe they're using their wings more, maybe they're using their legs more, maybe they're exercising more during that period. Gait score, more hours darkness. So this is looking at 3 gait scores. That's the worst gait score. This gait score was from 1, 2, and 3. So gait score of 3 is bad. More hours darkness, less birds had a high gait score of 3. So they walked better. So the conclusions, the lighting program had no negative effect on average daily gain. It had a positive effect on feed conversion. 4 hours darkness had the best result with regards to carcass yield. Less hours of darkness resulted in higher breast meat yields. More hours of darkness had a positive effect on leg meat yield and also wing meat yield. And gait score 3 are birds with poor gait score, better walking ability, more rolling gait, was reduced by giving the birds more darkness. This is actually from a customer in Italy. They grow 6 million broilers a week, and about a third of those, about 2 million of those birds, are 3.5 to 4 kilos in live weight. And what they looked at across there, they've got independent growers, farmers. They together did a survey looking at their farmers and looking at the number of hours darkness total that they gave in the life of the bird. And I thought this was really interesting. This is from the field. So growers had 220 hours total darkness for these male birds, as much as 436 hours darkness in the total life of the bird. By giving more hours darkness, gait score was improved slightly. Leg cold was reduced, and overall mortality was also reduced. This is growing large birds. So with regards to lighting programs, to have one lighting program that is applicable for all farms, for all companies, is not the case. You need to have the right lighting program for the farm and for the operation, the size of birds you're growing. There's some basic rules. In that first night, don't give any darkness. We need those chicks to find feed and water so that they can start to thermoregulate, develop. On the second night, we give 1 hour's darkness. This is simply to establish the off time for the birds, and this is very important. So the birds always know the lights go off at this specific time, so they can crop up with feed and water, so they're not stressed by being dehydrated or hungry during the dark period. 1 period of darkness for 24 hours. There's lots of studies on intermittent programs, but in the parts of the world we're here, where many of our houses are open-sided, with long days, it's difficult to manage intermittent lighting programs. And they generally give poorer results, more excitability. Don't go from 1 hour to 6 hours darkness until you've established thermoregulation in the bird. So that's when the body weight is about 130 to 180 grams. Give the darkness at night. Weigh the birds. When you reduce the darkness, you need to use that as a stimulant for growth. So chicks that come from younger parent flocks, you need to give that light earlier. Chicks from older parent flocks, you can hold back on giving that darkness. You need to use that darkness as a tool when you want to see growth rate improvement. And look at the past history of the farm. Bad farmers get bad results with lighting programs. You need to have good management. And you never want to turn the feed off during the dark period. Today's broiler has been selected for feed. If that feed is not there, birds get stressed. The length of dark period should be increased in steps. If the birds are flighting, reduce that dark period. If it's warm, hot, and your ventilation system isn't able to maintain adequate intake during the light hours, you must reduce the dark period. So with a lighting program, you need to have good ventilation. In the wintertime, coincide the off time with dusk, so the birds go into the coldest part of the night having food present inside. And in the summertime, coincide the on time of the peak dark with sunset. Stimulate the birds to eat in the cooler hours of the morning before it gets too hot. Using dawn dusk dimmers, there's some research being done on this with a company in the Netherlands called Pato. But generally what we say is that dawn dusk period should be separate from your lighting program, and that increase and decrease for maximum light intensity darkness should be about over a 1 hour period. Especially important if you've got high density in your houses. So what are the type of programs? This is the Cobb base program with regards to lighting. So for growing birds less than 2.5 kilos, a maximum of 6 hours darkness, and then reducing that darkness depending on how your birds are performing. At 21 days of age, when you do that weight, and the birds are too light, give them light. And if the weight's okay, wait. This is growing birds less than 2.5 kilos, 2.5 to 3 kilos, giving a maximum of 8 hours darkness. Slaughter weight greater than 3 kilos, giving as much as 10 hours darkness. That's the type of lighting program we see in places like Brazil, Argentina, Italy. So with regard to the lighting program, you need to manage it so the birds don't get too flighty. If the birds are flighty, it can increase things like skin scratches and make the catching more difficult. And lighting program, the more darkness you give, the better the management has to be. When you decide on what's the best lighting program for you, consider the breed you have, the weight that you're slaughtering your birds at, the nutrition. Low density nutrition requires less darkness than higher nutrition. The ventilation level, it's very important that you're able to keep those birds cool during that feeding period. Have you enough equipment? The density that you have, and the management. Thank you very much.